I think it would be great to move on to our second speaker and then do questions in the round, if you like.
Okay, well, my name is Rob West. I am the lead for Education and Skills Policy at the Confederation for British Industry, the CBI. Thank you for inviting me, first of all. It's a real pleasure to have some fascinating inputs that we've heard today. I've been busy scribbling, going, oh, I want to say that now, I want to say this now. But I will resist the temptation because I'm aware that I'm the only person keeping you from lunch. So I will try to make this swift and easy. The CBI then, if you don't know, we are the leading business organisation in the UK. We represent over 150,000 business voices. We're well known for representing very large corporate household name businesses. We also represent a significant number of smaller businesses that you may not have heard of, but will be making a significant contribution in your communities and in their sectors. And they exist up and down the country, across the UK. They cover all industry sectors, as well as education and training providers. And as has always been said, City, University of St George's are members as well. And that gives us a unique perspective to share with government and other stakeholders, because we're able to give a full picture of what's going on. We aim to represent British business. We advocate for policies that promote economic growth. And in the introduction, it was mentioned about the CBI and ethics as well being a potential case study. The CBI is a membership organisation. So we had quite a straightforward test, really. If there was any value in anything we did, then our members would be members, or our members would not be members. And there seems to appear that what we're able to do, the voices we're able to represent, that broad range of voices, is something that is of value to our members. So the second question we had to ask ourselves very much there was, do we operate to the standards of ethics and social responsibility that our members expect of us, and of course we expect of ourselves? And that means that looking at the description of the symposium ourselves, we know as well as anyone the need to develop the next generation of professionals as professionals that are aware of the implication and the impact of their decisions and the role of ethical behaviour as well. Now, because I'm coming here from the CBI, I'm speaking to you very much through the lens of a business lens, but it will cover other topics that I'm sure you're going to look at, leadership being something that runs all the way through this. I also hope that I'm going to be offering some insights for you all, but particularly in relation to you students there at the back, because you are these next generation of professionals that we're talking about here. So I've been asked to speak to you specifically about future skills on that theme, and what we mean by that are the competencies and the abilities that will become increasingly important over the coming years due to the changes and trends that are happening in the world. So what are they then? Well, here are three key ones. Let's start then with new technologies as well. And that stat that I've got up there, 22% of the current workforce activities across the EU will be automated by 2030. So let me put that into context. You're talking, therefore, about 50 million jobs will change in the next 5 years. Or, in other words, almost 1 in 4 jobs will be done in a different way in 5 years or less than the way they're being done now. And of course, new technology isn't really new, is it? I mean, this isn't a new thing. Those of you like me who, when you're channel hopping, can't resist stopping on open all hours and watching Ronnie Barker try to navigate his temperamental cash till, do remember, of course, the cash tills went out a long time ago and were replaced by electronic tills. And nowadays you go to self-service kiosk where you do the scanning yourselves. And The role is then checking customers are able to operate those particular systems. And that data then goes through to inform the digital inventory. That means the shops are always stocked in the right way. And that continues to be developed as well. Amazon Fresh doing a development of pay at the pump that's been done, where you actually scan in your details before, you take your stuff off the shelf, and then you walk out the shop. You don't even scan. The change in new technology is the speed of change. Things are changing rapidly, really, really quickly. If you look at the technological changes over the last 5 years, compare them to the changes over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years, it's got quicker and quicker and quicker. So, new technology then, one of the key drivers. Environmental challenges, again, is something that's been around as a subject for a while, and will continue to drive this demand for skills with sustainability and green technology. So the role of sustainability manager is still a relatively new one, and even that itself is starting to expand and covering some of those environmental and social and governance, those ESG rules that Olivia was talking about, as part of the evolution of social value. And even, actually, Olivia's own role, group Savile Earth, I mean, that hasn't been around very long at all as well. She talked about being the first undergraduate on the first Global Sustainability and Development course, how new that was. I went down the theatre route, by the way. Yeah. So you now need professionals that have at least some knowledge and some awareness of the issues that surround topics like renewable energy, environmental management, sustainable practices across a whole range of different industries. There was a time when people linked, I think, environmental challenges to something for the energy industry to deal with, or some of the utilities industries. It's far, far broader and cuts across every industry as well. And then actually, some of those social value skills that Olivia mentioned as well, really important. Our members talk to us in answer to your question about what businesses expect. Certainly what they desire and demand now are skills in creativity, in critical thinking, in teamwork, in problem solving, and in resilience. And they're becoming important for all jobs across the country. We work on a programme with the National Foundation for Education Research called Skills Imperative 2035, looking at the skills that we need there. And that's suggesting that these skills shortages are going to worsen as we need those particular roles. The changing nature of work, of course, meaning things like remote working, well-being, gig economy. So we really need to address these facts that there are these skills demands coming in, but there are either skills gaps in the knowledge and abilities of the people already in the workforce, or skill shortages in businesses not being able to find people to do those particular roles as well. So we're currently about 250,000 job vacancies in the UK. We know that there is this demand. How are we going to get to a situation where we start to bridge that gap between the skill shortages and those? Well, first of all, you probably need to be aware of what the future skills needs are. And there are probably 6 key areas, these 6 areas that our own members, CBI members, have highlighted to us as saying they need. The first one there, adaptability and lifelong learning. The pace of change of the workforce that I've talked about means actually you need to be committed to learning throughout the rest of your life. What you learn at university actually is going to be time limited. You're going to need to learn something else somewhere within your career. And that's a real problem for the UK, well, for many countries, but particularly if you look at the UK, we have a really outdated education system and a way of delivering education. We still have an education that suggests you are educated up to the age of 16 or 19 or 21, and then you get a job. But actually, continuous upskilling, continuous retraining is going to be necessary to stay relevant to the demands of the world of work. You don't have a career, you have multiple careers. And again, as Olivia was talking about, those social value career pathways. she was talking in a very, very different way than a careers advisor will talk to you. Because careers advisors still talk to people about what job will you do, what career do you want. Actually, the focus needs to be on what skills do I need to develop that will enable me to follow a career pathway that of my choosing as well, and in terms of where the demand is. The second one, digital and data skills. As technology continues to evolve, a growing need for skills in areas, and we've heard a lot about AI, but also machine learning, cyber security, data analytics. These are all essential skills that we're being told about. And as I previously mentioned, increasing focuses on sustainability means we need people who are both passionate about and able to address concerns to do with climate change, who have expertise in green technologies and sustainable business practices. Health and social care, we heard that panel talk there very much about healthcare and ethics and how we're training healthcare professionals to be able to make those decisions. But we have an aging population, and that means there's increasing healthcare needs that's going to drive demands for skills in health and social care. We're seeing a move in the NHS now more towards preventative care rather than dealing with problems that already exist. So there's a demand now for professionals with expertise in areas such as mental health and general wellness that wasn't there before. STEM skills have been around for a while as a demand: science, technology, engineering and maths. They'll continue to be in high demand, particularly in sectors like biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, advanced manufacturing, crucial for development as well. And then that last part, the interpersonal, or call them soft skills, or we'd like to call them essential skills actually, because as automation takes over more routine tasks, there's a greater emphasis on those skills such as communications. We need changes, therefore, not only to the way that people operate, but the way people lead. People need to manage people in a different way, and manage people who are able to navigate complex and dynamic work environments. We're behind the curve on reality here. Many businesses, you'll hear talk about how do we get people back to work? How do we get people back into the office? We've got some even RFE college members who've moved to a 4-day week. But let's notice the world of work and the ways we work have changed. And they've been exacerbated by moments such as COVID. But really what COVID just did is it supercharged a path that we were already on anyway. People moved towards streaming more. People moved towards digital. People moved towards remote working. But it was already there happening. And some of those figures there suggest to you that you know, this is something that's very, very important. We did a lot of work with our members last year on adult skills and what they meant by that. What skills will people need once they have left formal education? What is it that we need that we can work with people on? And what they told us within this was we need to be changing as businesses as well. That quote out there is about what happens if you just go back and actually you find a business are behind the curve and operating in old ways. So it's really important that businesses do this. And what they told us was that key to this is strategic workforce planning. And actually we're not very good as businesses here about planning for the future as well. And what we mean by that is analysing your current workforce. One of the things our Skills Imperative programme has shown is that most businesses don't know the skills their employees already have. They've employed someone because they have the skills and competencies to do a particular job role. But we've already said job roles are changing. And we then haven't looked to go, well, what other skills has that person got? What might be transferable? What person is it that's doing something to do with communications with the scouts outside or something else, or doing football coaching or having other communication skills? What skills can we develop here? So we're not very good as businesses about analysing what we've got. We're not very good at determining our future workforce needs. Everything is so much about surviving. there's very little about thriving. Very few companies, in fact, there's one I do know that think about their skills needs 50 years in the future. And they say, of course, that, you know, we don't know what that is, but that gives us a North Star. That gives us something to think about that will constantly train. But most businesses don't really think about what they're going to need in the future, so therefore you've got a gap when something happens. And so that identifying the gap between what we have now, what we have in the future is going to be really important, and then implementing solutions. It's all about how do we get the right people with the right skills employed in the right place at the right time, at the right cost, and on the right contract. So what does this all mean for what we're talking about today in terms of the theme of ethics and social value? Well, here are some of the key aspects that come to my mind. In terms of ethical decision making, as technology evolves, making ethical decisions becomes even more crucial. And an obvious example we've heard about, the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. And we you said before about the ethics and the safety concerns that exist. But in some work we were doing with some of our members, Southampton University, who have been teaching AI for some time, admitted to us it's only in recent times they've had a module on their course about ethics. They actually, even within the teaching of courses, the concept of ethics isn't spoken of or isn't talked about. So that embedding ethics is really important. I think it's right when it said that ethics is always catching up with technology. I think that's right. The point is there is a real tension in slowing something down too much because we operate in a global world now. If we don't develop something, someone else will. So ethical decision making, really important in relation to skills. Social responsibilities as well. Future skills involve a strong sense of social responsibility. So you need to consider those impact of businesses on society. And again, we heard some examples as well earlier there, about mobile phones and energy consumptions as well. Think about fracking has gone off the agenda. I bet it will come back onto the agenda as well. As more concerns around water contamination and respiratory issues come in, you can't any longer ignore those issues as well. And as I've previously stated, sustainability as well. Skills related to sustainability are important. You need to know about environmental changes, a knowledge about things like renewable energy, and as we said earlier, planetary health is becoming important. Cultural competence, again, it's an increasingly globalized world. And so cultural competence is really important. Think again, our theme about health. Healthcare workers can only benefit, can't they, from training in working with patients from culturally diverse backgrounds. That's how you're able to communicate to people effectively, how you can demonstrate that you have a sensitivity towards patients' values and beliefs, because we have a wide range of values and beliefs in the society in which we live. And finally, transparency and accountability. So future skills include that ability to be transparent about what you do. We talked on the panel about sharing findings and what data do we share as well. You need to be accountable for your own actions, and that's vital for building and maintaining trust. And I'd say that word of trust is at the heart of all of this debate. Do we trust all the stakeholders to be able to do what we want to do? As I said, I've come at this from a business perspective. You'll get nothing done if you only listen to the side of business, because you need to be listening to communities, education providers, workers, and government as well. But by focusing on these skills, our next generation, you particularly at the back, of individuals and those new organisations, the startups that I know we've got going here, you won't only be prepared for the future challenges, but you will be contributing to the more ethical and socially responsible world that we all desire. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Rob. Listening to you, I'm really heartened and excited that I know that this afternoon there'll be some work focusing on our graduate attributes, actually, because we have the graduate attribute always learning here, which I think you've spoken to. And I certainly would say that our careers team are absolutely focused on skills, not simply on knowledge, and bringing that value. We are the University of Business Practice and Professions, and we are committed to employability. So I'm obliged to say that. All right, so we're going to have questions from the audience. And while I'd really like to encourage our students to ask some questions here. So be brave, come up with some questions, because it's you that we must focus on when it comes to thinking about the changing world of work and making sure that we're aligned with giving you the opportunities while you're at university to get ready to lead in that future world of work and all of the things we've been talking about. But so while you're thinking of some questions, I've got one, which is that I think everybody today has talked about the significant, important, the value of critical thinking, being able to exercise through reference to ethical frameworks, through reference to professional standards, that critical thinking, and you both mentioned how important it is. Could you give us some steer as to how our students can evidence their critical skills in the sort of processes of their early careers? Perhaps I could ask you.
There's an interesting thing, isn't there, about how universities have reacted to the use of AI. You use ChatGPT in one thing, and there was a phase where universities went into, let's ban it. And now what we're seeing more and more is people have you used it? Because you should use it to start. The critical thinking element example is going, I used it for this particular purpose, and my thinking on it meant that was right, that was wrong, that needs challenging. So I think an example there that springs straight to mind in terms of critical thinking is being able not just to take in information, but be able to analyze that information and form a view as to what needs to happen. Now, in the context of what we're talking about today, I think that's how you might say, well, yes, fracking may have these particular benefits, but my critical thinking suggests you need to be sure about what the water contamination elements might be within a particular area. So it's how you go beyond just knowledge, again, into skills. I think that's critical thinking for me.
Thanks, Rob. Olivia.
Yeah, there's lots of different things that come to my mind. So when I did my first ever lecture at uni, our sustainability professor sat there and said that to be a critical thinker, you need to think pessimistically at things. It's just not always the right way. I call myself an optimistic pessimist in a way. But what I mean by that is when you read something, it's always about thinking, just like Rob was saying, is this the whole sense of truth? And what is the purpose of this information? And it's really important that I think as a younger generation, it's really important we do this, especially with social media, with how things are coming about. It's about looking at things and not accepting it's the one source of truth. So looking at things and thinking with a critical eye of thinking, where's this come from? Who's created this? What is the output? And what is my view on this? And if you can think with those kind of ideas, it's a right way of doing it. And at Savills, we have values that we have to align to. And one of them is about listening. One of them is about empowering. One of them is about collaborating. And one of them is about challenging. And I think that's the one key thing that I would always say to a young professional is if you're going into a job interview, as you're trying to do things, if you can demonstrate ways of which you've thought about something and you've challenged, that is a key way of being able to demonstrate critical thinking.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's open it up. Yeah, great. We'll go to the back of the room first, then we'll come to you. Yeah, right at the back. Thank you.
Hi, I've got a question for Robert. Do you have any advice on balancing innovative solutions in terms of you saying business leaders, whilst also thinking about the monetary side and creating profit in a way? Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Really good question there. Because the truth is you need both, really. You won't make profit unless you're
innovative, and if you are only innovative, then you won't make a profit. And again, it's another factor about the world at the moment where things are far more complicated. HR directors tell us this, and they say, it used to be quite straightforward, they said, to recruit somebody, because you put an advert in a newspaper and you get somebody with the skills to do them. Now what you do is, some cases you try to do that because you have an urgent need, but you're acutely aware of, if I'm not investing in something in the future, if I'm not building my future workforce, then actually I'm going to have a problem further down the line. But if I only focus on building for the future and investing in entry-level people coming into our job, and I'm not getting the orders out of the door, I haven't got a business to operate. And sometimes I need to borrow as well. I need someone in for a short period of time to build it. So HR teams will talk about build, borrow, buy as being a solution. So coming back to your point, I think that's what you need to do, is actually be able to do both. Am I being innovative? But all corporate businesses will tell you that the dictating is the bottom line. Profit, again, it's different for different people. People's profit margins are very different. Some businesses have a 30% profit margin, others have a 5% profit margin. So again, defining what you need for profit that will enable you to continue to innovate is done. So does that make sense, to try and be able to align both of those, but not tip so much innovation I'm not making any profit, and not make so much profit but I'm not innovating, and then eventually my profit's going to go.
Thanks, Rob. And I know the question didn't come to you, but please answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one, and it's something that I think in the world of sustainability we're getting a lot, because we, as social value, we have to demonstrate social value as an investment, not a cost. So the one thing that, if this is it's going to be an interesting thing as businesses evolve, but the one thing that we see at the moment is, how can you understand what value is? So what does value mean? And profitability is always one aspect of it, but understanding actually what is the value that will be returned as a result of the innovation. And then the big practical step that we see is, how can you make a business case that eloquently explains the benefits and the value add of innovation? And that is where the battle will come down to. It will come down to ultimately what the key decision stakeholders are, what they see as value is.
Thank you. And with making another small advert for our graduate attributes and how important they are, we focus on being a connected professional. So professionals have the commercial acumen, have the range of tools at their disposal to be able to sort of walk the line that you're describing, between being really able to create value, but also aware of the different types of value that may entail for the short and the medium, and of course the long term, which is what we must also focus on. Great question from the back of the room. We had a question at the front. Yes, now from the front, but that's not the end of questions from the back.
Robert showed us that we've got an education system in this country that produces skills shortages. And I just wonder whether it's ethically acceptable to interfere in that education system and tell children, youngsters, that they cannot study certain things, that they have to study different things? Or are we quite happy that our education system produces skills shortages?
No, we're not quite happy. Our education system produces skills shortages, so that's kind of where you start from. It's interesting about how much you dictate what somebody studies and where the drivers are. There's a lot of talk around at the moment that we hear about an employer-led system. And actually what our members tell us is, I don't want an employer-led system. I want an employer-responsive system. I want the knowledge that they know our business exists, we know what contribution we make to the community, and that's taken into account. But we don't know about curriculum development. We don't know how you would develop somebody over a period of time. So I think the answer to a lot of this is can you get the collaboration going? Can you get government to acknowledge, actually, our education system doesn't quite work? There's a curriculum assessment review going on at the moment. I don't think it's really going to change things that much. but can you get a genuine dialogue? And we hear this a lot from our members of, we want to be involved in the co-design of solutions. We don't want to just be involved in how you deliver the program that you've come up with, be that T-levels or whatever. We want to be involved in how you shape that. And that for me is the answer, getting those stakeholders, providers, businesses and government particularly, but other groups as well, communities and workers involved to shape that and say, first of all, the education system isn't working. Second of all, how do we all get skin in the game to make sure it works for all of us? Skill shortages and in terms of social value as well.
I have a very personal view on this one. So I'm dyslexic. So academia and school was not enjoyable. And I didn't even want to go to university. My sixth form said that you have to go view one university. So that's why I went to go to Warwick. I went to go see theatre because I thought, I'm not very academic, but I can get away with if 50% is practical. I can kind of worm my way through a degree. And I found a leaflet with my degree. And that's how everything happened for me. But actually, I think if you look at the way of which we are becoming more accepting of neurodivergence and of disabilities, actually, how can we amend main school education, but also higher education as well, to be accessible for those who are not your traditional thinking brain? Because I think as we've evolved, actually the way everyone thinks is really different. And I think actually for me, university, because my degree was critical thinking, it was not sitting looking at a textbook, which was perfect for me as an individual. It was more about real world application. It gave me that confidence that when I went into the workplace, I felt empowered. So it's actually about understanding how can we bring real world context into education more, and how can we ensure that we're adapting to all the different diverse needs and accessibility that we have. And also, if we look in the UK, if English isn't most people's first languages, how can we adapt and evolve, not just to those who might be neurodivergent or have disabilities, but actually those which have got different cultures? How can we bring that into our education system? I think is key.
Thank you, speakers. Okay, last chance from the back of the room. Is there? Yes?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a student adult nurse here at City, and I have a question regarding kind of education and social care, because during my, I'm in my last year, but all my placements have been in hospitals. And when you look at kind of the big problem with healthcare and social care, it's that there's not enough people working in adult social care. What role do you think businesses and industry can play in bridging that gap between the education in universities and getting people to work in social care and making it somewhere that, people can see themselves having a career?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Look, even in hospitals, there are a lot of businesses already involved in there in terms of supply chain and groups. And so it's, again, a bit more of that imaginative, creative thinking about, well, if you're in a hospital, who supplies this particular work? In terms of that person going into community care, then who's doing that one? So a kind of broader mapping of what health and social care means, and also what it will mean in the future, because I mentioned, it's an aging population. There's going to be increasing demands, and there is this, it's like moving a tanker around, but I think there is a push towards going preventative care now, needs to happen. So it's a bit about trying to wake up to that, again, reality of the world of work is changing, the world of healthcare work is changing. The role businesses can play within that, well, corporate businesses would get involved if they could see that there was a return on investment. And that would be, obviously it's financial ones. There may be business elements that are looking at it from social value. But you've got to understand that's how corporate businesses operate, and that will be the measure that they will take with it. But some public-private partnerships may well be a particular model that can do. So I guess what I'm saying is there are lots of opportunities to do that, but it requires everyone just to take a step back and look at that bigger picture.
Yeah, so I've worked quite a lot with the ICBs. One of the big things that we've always spoken about, and I think real estate as well from this angle is traditional, is people have a in society and also going through the education system have a traditional view of what the roles are. And the roles aren't necessarily the most attractive, and they aren't actually what there's so many opportunities are for development of careers in health and social care, that I think there really needs to be a step led from the health and social care world of understanding that mapping of careers and what pathways look like, to actually really ensure that then we can then go to schools and education providers and provide them with the opportunities of understanding what career pathways look like. Because if you don't know what it is, then no one's going to go into it. I think that's one of the biggest issues at the moment.
Thank you. That's a very powerful question. One last one? Yes? No? Go for it.
Thank you. I'm Julia George from the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists. I have a question about skills, and we've talked a lot about the guardrails that we need in place to make sure that we're thinking of social impact, thinking of the environment and so on. I've heard no one talk about actually imagination when you're looking at somebody you're going to employ. We've talked about innovation. That's not going to come without imagination. And then, of course, you drive those ideas into practical products and so on that do deliver to the bottom line. But you have to start with that. What is the one thing we can do, either at universities or in the working place, to encourage that? Because that might mean you will change even the job descriptions that you've currently got, just because you've got one youngster coming in and you allow them the room to be imaginative. More of a comment, really.
Thank you, Gina. I'm going to leave that that advocacy for the creative problem-solving skills, I think the two speakers mentioned, but with a real focus on creativity hanging in the air, because we're going to, I think, move to some nourishment. Just to your point at the back, we've got fantastic entrepreneurship work, and a lot of it is addressing social care and healthcare, so it'd be great to get you involved if you're not involved already in some of that. But look, you concentrated so hard. We've had a flurry of questions right at the last minute. You're clearly ready for an energising lunch and many more conversations to come. I'd like to thank our speakers, Olivia, Rob, who've come to us to really talk about the application of developing these important agendas in the workplace. So really value everyone's time. Thank you very much, and it's now lunchtime.